Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into an executive report on a really critical issue: the stark, severe gap between legal marital property rights and the actual lived realities of families in the Philippines. On paper, the laws protecting spouses look incredibly balanced. But in practice, across so many households, there's just this massive, systemic disconnect. We're going to look at this strictly through an analytical, report-style lens to figure out exactly how unequal property rights reinforce economic disadvantages, and more importantly, how we can restructure policy frameworks to fix the whole shebang. So let's get right to it.
Here's the agenda for our briefing today. We'll systematically cover 5 key areas. First, the legal baseline. Then, analysis of the problem. Third, examining the evidence. Fourth, policy recommendations. And finally, building fairer systems.
All right, Section 1, the legal baseline, equality on paper.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got to start by acknowledging the legal foundation the Philippines already has in place. The Philippine Family Code officially, and very explicitly, recognizes equality between spouses when it comes to managing marital property. The law outlines these specific regimes, primarily the conjugal partnership of gains and absolute community of property. Now, what do these formal terms actually mean? Essentially, they mean that marriage is designed by the state to be a completely equal financial partnership. It's like a joint venture where both spouses are legally granted equal management, equal voice, and equal ownership of the property acquired during their union. So the legal architecture for economic fairness, it exists. The intention of the law is crystal clear.
Moving to Section 2, analysis of the problem, the gap in equality.
So if the law is so clear, why on earth is there a gap? Well, that's the core paradox of our report. We need to shift our focus from what's written in the statutes to how these laws are actually implemented, or, not implemented in daily life. On one side, you've got these solid constitutional and legal guarantees of shared property management. But on the flip side, you have the everyday reality. From a political science and gender studies perspective, our source highlights how patriarchal norms and deeply ingrained cultural expectations frequently just override these legal rights. Men are routinely defaulted to as the primary financial decision makers, while women are traditionally boxed into caregiving roles. This cultural override effectively strips so many women of their economic independence, completely regardless of what the law actually says.
This crucial point is captured perfectly in this breakdown. If we look at the structural inequalities, we see that because women are performing massive amounts of uncompensated domestic labor, they are often entirely sidelined from active economic participation. This setup inherently limits a woman's financial authority within the home. Now, looking at the resulting vulnerabilities, we see the fallout. The structural setup leads directly to a widespread lack of legal awareness regarding property and inheritance rights, and worse, it creates a steep, dangerous economic dependence on the spouse. It's a real systemic hurdle.
We really have to emphasize the real-world impact of this imbalance because it is absolutely crucial. These aren't just abstract sociological concepts. These are structural realities that profoundly dictate human lives. When a woman is financially dependent and lacks awareness of her legal rights to conjugal property, her vulnerability literally skyrockets. In cases of marital conflict, abandonment, or separation, this economic dependence can quickly trap individuals in poverty or make them susceptible to severe economic abuse. The stakes here are incredibly high.
That brings us to Section 3, examining the evidence, institutional data.
Now, what's really interesting about this next point is the magnitude, 2 to 3. To fully grasp the scale of this problem, we need to move beyond theory and ground our briefing in some hard institutional data. According to 2023 data from UN Women, women globally perform up to 2 to 3 times more unpaid care and domestic work than men. I mean, this is the invisible engine sustaining households across the world. But because this labor isn't economically recognized, it directly diminishes a woman's financial independence and basically obliterates her bargaining power within the marriage.
Furthermore, we have this stark assessment from the World Bank in 2024. They state it very clearly. Legal frameworks supporting gender equality do not always translate into equal real-world outcomes, particularly in property ownership and financial decision-making. This lends absolute institutional credibility to the structural failures we've just been talking about. Having the law on the books is simply not enough to ensure justice inside the home.
And when we look locally, the Philippine Statistics Authority perfectly mirrors this global trend. Their findings confirm that women in the Philippines spend significantly more time on unpaid household and caregiving responsibilities compared to men. This daily reality constantly reinforces those traditional gender roles, which severely limits women's broader economic participation. So the data is completely cohesive, from the global level straight down to the local level. Unpaid labor disrupts legal equality.
All right, Section 4, Policy Recommendations, the Action Plan for Reform.
We've mapped the problem and examined the institutional data. Now let's move to and see how this builds into an actual blueprint for stakeholders. Here are the 5 crucial steps our source identifies to fix the marital property gap. 1. Strengthen legal education so spouses actually know their rights regarding ownership and inheritance. 2. Expand affordable legal assistance for those facing property disputes or abuse. 3. Actively promote shared financial decision-making as a cultural norm. 4. Strengthen state protections specifically against economic abuse. And 5. Support women's economic empowerment.
Let's actually zoom in on that 5th point for a second, because why this matters cannot be overstated. True equality requires active, tangible economic empowerment. This means rolling out financial literacy education, expanding employment and livelihood opportunities, backing entrepreneurship, and ensuring equal access to banking and property ownership. You just cannot have balanced relationships and fair decision-making if one partner lacks independent financial capability. The laws absolutely need the backing of economic access to actually work in the real world.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, Building Fairer Systems, Expected Outcomes.
If we actually implement this action plan, what does the resulting society look like? Well, the projected outcomes are profound. We'd see greater gender equality practiced within the marriage itself. We'd see increased economic security for families and a sharp, much-needed reduction in financial exploitation and abuse. Ultimately, this all leads to fairer household decision-making and, importantly, stronger overall family stability. Because at the end of the day, protecting property rights isn't just about money or ledgers. It is fundamentally a matter of justice, dignity, and human rights that stabilizes the very foundation of our society.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you all with this thought. If equality already exists on paper, what must change in our own society and our own communities to ensure genuine economic justice is practiced in every home? It's really a question of turning written law into lived reality. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Take this data, think about how it applies to the structures around you, and keep exploring.